So this morning, John chapter 14, one of those passages which is often used at funerals. That's, I think, where I've heard it the most. John 14 at funerals, where you have someone talking about how they have gone home. The one that they love has gone to a better place. And they've gone to their forever home to be with God. And whilst it brings comfort at funerals, we might have questions about it. We might have questions like this. In what way is it better? How do we know this place where someone has gone to is actually in a better place? And then there's maybe the question that we are just too scared to articulate. What if it's all just wishful thinking? What if it's all just a way of trying to make us feel a little bit better at the reality of death and our inability to face it? What if it's just a dream and there's no reality to it? But what if it's true? What if it's true what Jesus says here? What if he is making a reality for us in the future which would make this world feel like a black and white TV? And I know I've just dated myself with that because some people in the room have no idea what a black and white TV looks like. What if Jesus is making something for us in the future which makes this look flat and boring and dull? So this passage, is it just something to calm us down at the turmoil of life? Or is it something more? Is it something vibrant and special which can really speak to us? Well, when we delve into this passage, for the disciples who heard Jesus say these words for the very first time, this was a moment of turmoil for them. They've just heard Jesus saying to them that he's going to leave them and they can't follow him. At least not yet. And that has deeply disturbed them. In the previous passage, Peter has asked Jesus, "Where are you going?" And he hasn't got a straight answer from him. That's why Thomas, a little bit later on, asks exactly the same question. And Jesus' answer about where he's going is this. He's going to the Father's house to prepare a place for them. And he'll come back and get them. And he is the only way people can get there. He's going to the Father's house, he's going to prepare a place, and he's going to come back and get them, and he's the only way people get there. And we're going to draw some things out of this morning. And the first thing I'd like you to think about is those words Jesus says when he says he's going to prepare a place for you. A place for you. We like to have our place, don't we? We like to have a place that feels like home. I think deep within the human soul, there is something where we like our place. Some of you have even demonstrated that this morning. You come to church and you have your place. I mean, there's a character from a TV show, a comedy series called The Big Bang Theory. This is a picture of him about to appear. He has his spot. And woe betide anyone who sits in this spot. Now, I'm not going to say any of you are like that, but some of you come to church and there's a place where you feel comfortable. There's a place where you want to sit. We all love to have our place. That's just a little bit of an example of it. But we all have, I think, or we all yearn for, a place that we call home. So a next picture for you. So this one. This is the beach at West Runton looking towards Cromer. And for me, I can smell that picture. I can smell it. I know what that place is like. I know what the sand feels like underfoot. I know how the beach changes as you walk up towards the cliffs. I can feel the breeze and the rain because it rains a lot there. For me, that picture brings back memories of childhood holidays. I can remember the sound of the metal bins at the caravan site and how they used to go down. I can remember walking across dew-covered grass there. For me, that's a place that feels like where I belong. Feels like it. This next one of those houses is the house that I grew up in. That fence you can see, I know what that feels like when you crash into it on a bike. I know what it feels like. I know the smell of that fence. I know it intimately. I know how that path goes up and down because I used to ride my bike down it. I know that place. And sometimes when I go and visit my mum, and Lawrence doesn't know this, I will go and park there and just have a walk round because it feels like home. It feels where I belong. It's a place I connect with. And I think maybe all of us, to one degree or another, have got somewhere like this. It's woven into our souls. We want to feel like we belong somewhere. Sometimes you get this from a person. There's a song which has got these lyrics in it. Something in your eyes makes me want to lose myself. Makes me want to lose myself in your arms. Feels like home to me. That someone can feel like home. And my current earworm has this line, and if you know this song, I'm both impressed and disappointed in you. But there's a song that is stuck in my head which has got this line. He ain't where we're from, but he feels like home. And what is home? What is home? It's a place where we are known. It's a place where we're accepted. It's a place where we're loved. It's a place of security. It's a place of comfort. And I think within all of us, we want to have our place. I think we have it because God's put it into our soul. I think God has put into our soul, we want to find a place where we belong. And I think it's there because right at the beginning, what does God do? He creates a world. He creates a garden. And he puts his people into it. And that was home. That was home. And yet humanity was pushed out of that garden because of what they did. And so from that point forwards, we've always had this desire to find somewhere where we belong. We ache for it. And tragically, there are some people in this world who probably ache for it more than others. There's a Christian psychologist called Paul Tournier who says this: children who never find a home and never find a family carry it. They carry the pain, and they grow up with a desire for connection, but also with scars that make it incredibly difficult for them to be attached to other people. Jesus says to us here, he's going to make a place for us. I think that's what makes the story of the prodigal son so powerful. Because if you know that story, he's told his dad, I wish you were dead. He's blown the family fortune. He's impoverished everyone back home. He's brought shame to them by his actions. But when he starts to come to his senses, all he wants is to be home. He wants to be close to home. He wants to feel the grass under his feet. He wants to go back. And initially, he just wants to go back to the location. He just wants to be close to where home was, thinking he can't ever be there. And what's wonderful about that story is he's embraced and he's loved and he's welcomed home. That's what we want, isn't it? We want a place. And Jesus says to us by saying, I'm making a place for you. He's saying, I'm making that place. That's one of the things that he's saying. I think as we get older as followers of Christ, the Holy Spirit makes this clearer to us. People who I've met who are dying often say these words, I want to go home. I want to go home. They want to go to the place that God has been preparing for them all of their lives. And it's not a cry of defeat, it's something that's woven into them. They want to go to the place that Jesus is making for them. So that's good. It's good to know that Jesus is preparing a place, but there's another thing in this as well. We have to truly, really listen to what Jesus says. Where is the place that Jesus prepares? So if you look at verse 2, he says these words, in my Father's house are many rooms or many mansions, and that's where he's going to prepare the place for us that we belong. The place is in the Father's house. Now, I think this is one of those things that as Christians we have hollowed out the meaning of, and we have made something that it is not at all. I think we've taken a lot of the awe and the wonder out of that verse on the screen. We've made it sterile, we've made it colourless, because of how our discussions often go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play something out, and I want you to see if any of this connects with you or rings any bells, because it does for me. So older versions of the Bible translated this verse just like that. My Father's house has many mansions. What do we do with that? What do we do with that? I think we build up a picture of heaven as we all have our own little individual dwelling, all by ourselves. We think about, that's going to be my personal house in heaven. And then we start to wonder, I wonder where it is. Where is it in relation to other people I love? Where is my wife's house going to be? Is it going to be next door, or is it going to be on the other side of heaven? Where's it going to be? And I don't know how you want that to play out, but that's the sort of thing. Does anyone ever, is it just me who's had these kind of thoughts? No, is it? Okay. You might think about, where's my kid's house going to be? I mean, heaven is a multitude of people that no one can count. Am I going to see the people I know and love easily? Am I just going to be lost in the crowd there and am I just going to go home each day to my own individual, personal, private house? Anyone else do that? Was it just me? It's just me, isn't it, by the looks of it? Okay. This is going to go well. Maybe you do this then. Elsewhere we read about how God rewards people in heaven. You remember you read these kind of things? And then this is what I think we do more than the previous thing is. We start to think, well, I know how this is going to happen. If God rewards me for how well I've served him, mansion's not happening. Mansion's not happening. I'm getting a shack. Is this resonating more with anyone? Okay, I'm getting a shack. For all eternity, the size of my house will tell everyone what a useless Christian I was for all eternity. Other people will have a 5-star beachside apartment and I'll have nothing more than a shed. For all eternity, it's going to be like that. If any of that is the picture you have in your head, was anyone with me? Okay, a few nods this time, thank you. You're just being nice now, I know. If any of that was part of your picture, I want you to do something with that picture. Delete it. Erase it completely and utterly. And those thoughts, get rid of them. Does God reward us in heaven? Yes, he does. There are passages which talk about it. But I think he gives us a hint. So when he talks about how we receive rewards, I think it's in 1 Corinthians 3, in the very next chapter, a passage which talks about that moment when Jesus returns, we get these words. At that time, each one will receive their praise from God. That's the reward. That's the reward. In that moment, God is going to look at your life and all of the bad stuff Jesus is going to have completely and utterly paid for, but he's going to see something good and honorable and pure and true and glorifying to him that you did. And he's going to say, that was brilliant. Well done you. That's your reward. He's going to do that. And if you think that sounds not very exciting, that's a reward like no other. That's the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-holy God of the universe looking at you and saying, well done. What a moment that's going to be. That's a reward that outstrips everything else. So what does Jesus mean by saying, in my Father's house are many rooms? Is it a hotel? Are we all going to have a little apartment? Is that what we're thinking? Probably not again. To understand what he's saying, we need to sit in the disciples' seat for a moment. Because how do they understand Father's house? When Jesus says to them, I'm going to my Father's house, what do they think of? Well, where else does that little phrase occur? In John 2, after Jesus gets mad at the money changers and all the traders in the temple, we read this. He says to them, stop turning my Father's house into a market. So when the disciples heard Jesus say, in my Father's house are many rooms, they're going to think temple. They're going to think of that place where God's very presence was, where heaven and earth meet, where God's presence was known and felt. That's what they would think of when they hear that Jesus is going to the Father's house to prepare them a room. See, what we do, when we read these words, we have a tendency to focus on the room. Where's my room going to be? Who's it going to be next door to? How big's my room going to be? The focus should be on, who are you going to be with? Who are you going to be with? You're going to be in the Father's house. You're going to be welcomed into his presence by the creator of the universe. He's going to look at your life and see something and say, well done for doing that. That's what it's going to be like. That is coming home. That's the place where you belong. So in that moment, let's try and build this up a little bit more. What's it going to be like? What's it going to be like? Well, earlier on, we read from Revelation 21. God's dwelling place is the place where God dwells with people, and he wipes away tears, and every grief is not necessarily forgotten, but wiped away. It's almost like the pain is taken in the moment. When a child falls over and scrapes their knee and a parent wipes the tears away, the kid doesn't forget the scrape, but they remember the love. Something about that is how God's going to work. In Psalm 84, talking about what it's like to be in God's presence, it says this: "How lovely is your dwelling place. My soul yearns, even faints, for the courts of the Lord." Being in God's presence is where this person really wants to be. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may have her young. The person who writes this looks at a sparrow building a nest in the temple and says, that is an honored being. We're going to be in that kind of place. It then goes on to say, "Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you." That's coming home. In 1 Corinthians 13, after that passage on love and how love is patient and kind and all of those wonderful things, we then get given to us a picture of what the future is going to be like when Jesus returns. And listen to this. So 1 Corinthians 13, "Now we see as in a reflection. Then we will see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I will know fully as I am fully known." What are those words saying? Well, keep them in mind and think about this for a moment. Every now and again, you will see videos online of children getting glasses for the first time. And these are children who basically can't see anything without those glasses. Or you might see videos of children getting cochlear implants put in for the first time. And they either see or hear their mother for the first time. Every single time you watch them, the same thing happens. Their face snaps in the direction of the person, and they beam. There's absolute delight, there's wonder, there's joy, as something which was a little bit vague and veiled before becomes absolutely clear to them. That's what going home to the Father's house is going to be like. It's going to be seeing God face to face. Now, we see reflections of him. We're going to see God face to face. Something no one could ever do all through the Bible. We're going to see the wonder of who he is. We're going to know him fully as he knows us. Just think about that for a minute. How awesome and eternal and incredible is God. Whatever picture you can come up with, he's more than that. And you're going to know him as well as he knows you. That's a thought. That's an incredible thought. You'll be able to see him face to face, and there'll be no guilt, there'll be no shame, there'll be no sense of unworthiness. It will all be as it was meant to be in the beginning, but more so because we'll remember just how gracious God is as well. And these words barely scratch the surface of it. And what are you going to be like? What are you going to be like? Here's something a bit strange. 1 John 3 verse 2. "Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." What we will be has not yet been made known. I don't even know how to begin explaining that, because what we will be has not yet been made known. There's a surprise coming about what you're going to be like. I mean, all we can say is we're going to be welcomed home, we're going to see Jesus, we're going to know God fully, and we'll be changed in some way so that C.S. Lewis puts it like this when he talks about this verse. "Remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you talk to may one day be a creature which if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship." That's coming home. That's the future. I think it's fair to say that having a room in the Father's house in which in his presence is fullness of joy is quite appealing, isn't it? Does it feel quite appealing? It feels quite appealing to me. It means that whatever delight you have here, whatever sense of home you have in this world, whatever experiences of God you have in this life, they're just mere ripples on the shoreline and a huge wave is coming. That's what it means. There's so much more to come. It'll be home. It'll be home. If you've lost someone who loved Christ, that's where they are right now. They're having a great time. They're having an absolutely fantastic time. That's where God's people go. Somewhere where they're delighted in and with someone that delights them. That resonates with the human heart, doesn't it? We want that. We want something like that. And the reason we want it is we were made for it. We were made to be at home with God. And that leads us to the next thing. How do we get there? How do we get there? And what we have to see is this: Jesus prepares the way. He makes the way. He is the way. Because let's go back to the room that all this occurs in, where this conversation takes place. It's the night before the cross. It's the night before the cross. For Jesus to say that he's going to the Father means this: imminent arrest. It means show trial. It means physical abuse. It means being spat on. It means injustice. It means brutal crucifixion, and those are just the human sufferings. On top of that, it means that he becomes our sin on our behalf. He becomes an offering for us. It means death, burial, resurrection. It means these words: the punishment that brings us peace is placed upon him. The story of the prodigal son. When I read that for myself, I like looking at the change of perspective that he's got in it. I always imagine there's a point in the story where he thinks it's impossible to come home. It's impossible to come back because of what he's done. And I think we get that in how he comes back, because he's got this entire speech going on in his head. I'm just going to be a servant. I can't come home, but I just want to be close. He thinks he deserves to be locked out, and yet he's going to be welcomed home. In the story of Adam and Eve, when they're thrown out of the garden, there's an angel with a sword that blocks the way and says, you can't come back here. When the temple was built and God's presence filled it, there were courtyards and curtains which all said, nope, can't come this far, can't get really, really close to God. When Jesus dies, that curtain rips. The door's opened, the door's unlocked, and it's like Jesus is saying, you can come. You can come right home. You can come into the place that I've prepared for you. Jesus is the way. He's the way. He makes the way. And what he does makes verse 1 true. So the first thing he says to them is this: don't let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe in me. In going to the cross, Jesus makes the route home that we long for. He makes acceptance possible. He makes forgiveness possible so that we can come towards God without fear. It's a stunning thing. And if you're trusting Jesus, that is what he has done for you. He's made a way home. So, what should it do to you? What should it do to me? Well, in terms of the future, when your days get short, it says that in the midst of it all, in the midst of struggle and all the fears you might have, it says this: you're going home. But not in some vague sense that I'm vague going to heaven somewhere. But you're going to be in the presence of one who loves you infinitely, where everything you've experienced of God here in this life is going to be turned up to 11 and more. It says to you, you'll be okay. It says to you, you'll be okay. It also says about your world right now and all your home and your possessions, it's home, but it's not home. It's home, but it's not home. It means you don't have to think your home is your castle. It means the things that you have, you can think, I can hold them lightly. I don't need to accumulate possessions. I don't need to get and get and get, because God is going to give me so much more later on. It means you can face troubles with a sense of calm, because the future is absolutely safe. When your heart is troubled, and I know in this room there are people whose hearts are troubled, it's medicine for the soul. Doesn't explain everything, doesn't explain why things happen, but it gives us something to hold on to. And what does this passage say about this place and this gathering? What does it say about church? It says this: if anything today has touched your soul about what God will one day do for you, then when people come here, it should be like a little taste of it. It should be a little taste of it. There should be an acceptance. There should be an understanding that you can be known here and loved. There should be a sense that you belong here and that other people belong here. If it's true that in our world there are people who struggle to find a home and people who struggle to find attachment, then among God's people is where that healing should begin to occur, where that wound starts to get healed, where prodigal sons and prodigal daughters don't find older brothers who resent their presence, but find people who echo the cry of a father who says, "My boy," when he sees him on the horizon. Where we don't resent someone joining the party, but we embrace them and bring them in. And what does it say if at this moment you're not sure what you think about Jesus? Well, maybe it makes that desire to have a place just begin to resonate with you. Maybe it makes you think, I do want to be loved, and I do want to be known, and I do want to be accepted. Maybe it makes you think there is something more. If that's the case, you have to really listen to what Jesus says, because he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. No other way. He's saying, if any of this has been exciting to you and made you think, I want this, then you need to come to him, because he's the path. If you need forgiveness, he's sorted that for you. Just come to him. You need to admit you're far from home, and you need to ask him to forgive you. And that's the great thing. When Jesus says, come to me, he doesn't say, come to me and I'll give you a to-do list. He says, come to me and I'll give you rest. He says he's gentle and he's humble. He will carry us home. He will carry all of us home if we trust him. Let's pray. Father, we would ask this morning that if the whole idea of being with you has been something which we've not completely wanted, then this would have been helpful. Father, I remember as a teenager often thinking, if going to heaven is just like a church service that goes on forever, I don't want to go there. But it's not. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be being with you. It's going to be in a place where we are loved and cared for, where we know you as much as you know us. And that we're not going to be alone in our own little house or hut. We're going to be in your house and in your presence. We're going to know you. And so we ask that this might inspire us and this might speak to us and that we might long to be with you.